Good evening. I'd like to call to order today, Wednesday, October the 4th, 2023 public hearing for the City of Tampa's Architectural Review Commission. I'm Susan Klasmus. I am the chair of the commission, and I'm also an architect. If you're here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. The commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation, and your project should be presented in the following order: the site plan, elevations, architectural details, and wall sections. Staff will then report the staff report, and we will then ask for public comment. Following your presentation, the commissioners will be asking questions in the same order as your presentation. When coming to the microphone, please state and spell your name clearly if you are here to speak for or against a project. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes, so take some time now to summarize your comments because 3 minutes goes by very quickly. Following the public comment period, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal, and then the public hearing will be closed. The only comments which will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the commissioners. The commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based on the City Ordinance, Chapter 27 of the City Zoning Code, the Design Guidelines, the Secretary of Interior Standards, Historic Preservation Development Review, or HPDRC comments, and the testimony given here tonight in the public hearing. Please remember that the ARC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owners and or their agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and or approvals. Now, if you haven't already done so, please do silence your cell phones, and I'll ask my fellow commissioners to introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Sutton. I am a registered architect. I also hold the Architectural Historian Chair for this commission.
I'm Brent Taylor. I'm a general contractor and I'm vice chair.
My name is Dan Myers. I'm an architect.
And joining us tonight, city staff, attorney Dana Crosby Collier, Alexis Guzman. We have Elaine Lund and Ron Vila. And Mr. Fernandez will be joining us. Yes. So we go ahead with the ex parte.
Good evening, Commissioners. Dana Crosby Collier from the City Attorney's Office. I'd like to ask if any member of the Commission has a conflict of interest with any item on the agenda this evening.
We do not.
None.
Thank you. Has any member engaged in ex parte communication regarding any item on the agenda?
I have not.
None.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ron Vila, of staff with Historic Preservation. Moving down the agenda under continuations, we have none reflected on the agenda this evening. And moving to the swear-in, everybody that wishes to testify, please stand up and raise your right hand, including staff.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be providing today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. We're ready for the first case, which is ARC 23-341. This is for the address of 1504 South Howard Avenue. This is in the Hyde Park Historic District. There is a building on site that will be demolished. It dates back to 1957. It is non-contributing. The underlying zoning is PD. With this presentation coming forward this evening, there is no need for a substantial change review. They are working within the entitlements established by the existing PD as this request moves forward. The request is for a certificate of appropriateness for new construction for a commercial building with site improvements. If you look on page 3 of your staff report, there are some past actions. There were some requests that came prior to this board for PDs, and it had been denied. And then currently you have the PD in front of you. As I stated, it has been reviewed by land development. The site plan that you're looking at this evening is a site plan that they reviewed and stated that it can come forward. Going to the photo presentation. This is the Sanborn map from 1929 showing the whole vicinity and the local district outlined in the red here. Property in question is in the southwest corner. Then looking at the vicinity map, just to kind of parallel what the Sanborn map showed. Once again, the property is in the southwest corner. It does flank 3 streets. It does flank Howard Avenue, Hills, and DeSoto. As we zoom in on the aerial of the property in question, once again, you have Howard that runs north and south. You have Hills that runs east and west. And then you have DeSoto that runs kind of north and south as well. If you look within the green area, there is a non-contributing but a period structure within the envelope of the subject site. That structure dates back to 1924. It will be part of the discussion as it goes forward. Focusing on the existing building, it's a 1-story building. This is the Howard Avenue elevation. Take into consideration some of the public spaces as well. You see the street, then you have the parkway, you have some vegetation there. You have the pedestrian circulation, and there is a perimeter wall around the building currently. As you go to the south within the subject site, there's a parking area there. This is the perimeter wall that I spoke about. When you get into the site, you have some parking there. You have solid waste, and you have some coolers. This area will be cleaned up, will be apparent through the presentation this evening. And as you continue to the south, on Howard Avenue, you have this new construction. Going back to the subject site, this is at the intersection of Howard and Hills, at the apex. Moving down Hills, you see the remainder of the structure that's in place currently. And the termination at the end is the period non-contributing structure that dates back to 1924. It is of the Craftsman style. Some street shots. This is looking down Howard. Subject site is over here, but down Howard to the north. Turning around, looking down Howard to the south as it dives into Bayshore. Subject site is over here. This is looking down Hills, back into the neighborhood, and Hills and Howard, the intersection. Subject site is over here. Across the street to the north, you have Burns Park. This is Hills and Howard in the background. Going back to the period 1924 building that's non-contributing, just so you see a little more of the articulation. And to conclude, the existing condition and how it sits today. That concludes the photo presentation. This time we'll have the agent address the board.
Thank you, Ron.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Tyler Hudson. My address is 400 North Ashley Drive. I'm an attorney with the law firm Gardner Brewer Hudson, and it's a privilege to share a bit of time with you this evening to talk about this very exciting project. Ron did a great job running through what we're talking about. I think everyone's very aware this building over the last several years has played as host to several restaurants, St. Bart's, Samba Room, most recently Le Bordeaux, and most recently Copperfish. But for the last 9 years, it's been dormant. And I'm thrilled to be here with Fouette and Annette, who are the owners of the property. They are the restaurateurs behind the concept that we hope to bring to this neighborhood. I'm also joined here by Alex Shaler, who's my colleague and a licensed civil engineer. Most importantly, I'm joined by Saul Fleischman, who's the project architect. He's going to walk through the meat of the certificate of appropriateness presentation. But before I turn it over to Saul, I did want to touch on a few things. The first is, as Ron alluded to, we are proposing really no changes to the zoning. In the last 9 years since Copperfish shut down, this site has naturally, given its location, been the subject of a lot of interest by real estate developers. Some plans for which even came to this board, which were not approved, I think which were heavily scrutinized by the neighborhood. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't note the, I think, humility with which the owners of the site have approached it, understanding what was approved in 2014 from a zoning perspective and abiding by that. And so what you can see on screen here, hopefully you can, it's a little tough to see the color, at least for me, unless I've gone colorblind, but the green outline is what the existing footprint is today. And the red is.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hudson, could you just zoom in a little bit?
Yeah,
Because it
sorry
is a
about
little
that.
hard to see the
Is it?
color
Yeah, sorry.
differentiation at this scale. Thank you, that's great.
So I think you all can see the green, that is what exists today. What is candidly a bit of a darker shade of red, perhaps black, is the footprint that we are proposing. And all of this footprint, this entire volume, this entire envelope is within the setback volume that was established back in the 2014 zoning. There are two conditions that we propose to add to the site plan, in that I do not want to be presumptuous, but if we are fortunate enough to get a favorable motion from this commission, I would like to make sure our part of that motion, Dana just passed those out, I'd like to walk through those right now. The first is that we are proposing, you'll note here, this is Hills Avenue, this is what runs north, along the north side of the restaurant. There are, I believe, 6 public parking spaces that are right there in front. We're proposing that as a condition to obtaining our certificate of occupancy. We obtain a right-of-way permit to utilize those spaces for valet parking management during the hours of operation of the restaurant. That is a concern. The neighborhood has had concerns for any redevelopment here about the traffic potential. And while we're not here to talk about traffic or parking or transportation, because that was handled already in the zoning, this is a commitment that the property owner wants to make, that, again, prior to getting a CO, we'll obtain a right-of-way permit for what are right-of-way public spaces right in front of the building, but again, happen to be mighty convenient for a parking valet management plan. The second proposed condition relates to the single family residence that candidly is a little bit covered up by some landscaping right now. We're proposed, that's an eligible structure to be contributing. It was built during the period of significance for the Hyde Park Local Historic District, but for whatever reason, it was never formally designated as a contributing structure. We're proposing that prior to getting a certificate of occupancy for the restaurant, that this be designated as a contributing structure. And we would plan to file that application with the Historic Preservation Commission quickly. I know that there's some prior proposals for the site recommend you had that building going away, being torn down. Total candor, I'm not sure that the owner or developer knows exactly what they will do with it, but we do understand how sensitive loss of contributing structures can be to local historic districts. And because this is eligible, the restaurant is not, we're willing to make that commitment, again, as a condition to getting our CO. These aren't trust us, these are we can't open our restaurant if we don't get it. And with that, I'm happy to answer any zoning questions, although as I've said, there really isn't much zoning here, so I'm going to turn things over to Saul to talk through the C of A application requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Good evening, Commissioners. Saul J. Fleischman Jr., Fleischman Garcia Maslowski Architects, 324 South Hyde Park Avenue, Suite 300. It's a pleasure to appear before you again in presenting this, which we think is a very great project for historic Hyde Park District. Okay. All right. Tyler went over, thank you. Tyler went over the site plan with you. I'd like to point out a few important features of the building. As he said, the footprint of the new building is substantially within the footprint of the original building, and that's an important issue. It fronts on hills, and we have an outdoor covered seating area for outdoor dining adjacent to the entrance. We have a handicap ramp to take you to the covered entry. In the back, we're utilizing the existing parking lot. Of course, we're going to resurface it, enhance it, but it's substantially what's there. Most importantly, we have a indoor air-conditioned trash room with a rolling door so that the trash can be free of vermin, flies, and smells to the neighborhood. We're providing a new cooler freezer substantially in the location of the existing one. And we have our service entrance to the kitchen back here. I'll get into a little bit more detail in the landscape plan. So we're blessed with some beautiful trees on the site, and we're going to save as many as we possibly can. There's a large oak back here at the entrance to the parking lot. We have some existing other oaks that we're saving here. We have an existing palm tree here, and we're suggesting a couple of new crepe myrtles to soften the building from Howard Avenue. Along Hills Avenue, we have some beautiful existing palm trees we're saving, and we're going to enhance it with some flowering shrubs around the building as well. The cooler freezer will be softened by a hedge, as is the back property line, which is adjacent to the residents that face DeSoto. We have 5 beautiful palm trees in the rear setback, which we'll also save. One of the things that the neighbors were concerned about, and we're certainly sensitive to, is keeping the lighting of the parking lot from bleeding into the neighborhood. So we've shown some suggested locations for our parking lot lighting. One here facing this part of the parking lot. Another one over here facing this part of the parking lot. And we have some light bollards, and you'll see that in a second, at the entrance. But no light will be shining into the neighbors. Okay. I'll briefly show you the elevations because we have some beautiful renderings that show them off better. But this is the west elevation off of Howard Avenue. As you can see, we have some very large windows that are framed by these tall techno wood surrounds, which are the architectural features, and they go up a little bit above the roof line. We have a height of about 27 feet 2 inches, so it's well within the 35-foot height limitation, and it's just a tall one-story building. We have some features on the building, some black marble towers, and we have the big H for the H Restaurant Tampa is on that black tower here, and then over the entrance canopy on the diagonal at the corner of Howard and Hills. As you can see, we have some horizontals that are shown. This is on the cement plaster stucco exterior, and they are to reference the horizontal clapboards that are used throughout the neighborhood. Okay. This is the north elevation looking from Burns Park and Hills Avenue back to the entrance. We have a lot of transparency at the front door, and you'll see the glass sliding doors in a second when I get to the materials. You can see the covered outdoor dining area right here. That's a black aluminum pergola structure, very clean and elegant. This is the east elevation, which is going to be blocked by the adjacent 2-story residence, so most of this will not be seen. What we do have back here, and I want to emphasize that, is over the kitchen, which is in the back corner of the restaurant, we have a 6-foot-high parapet. and that encloses the mechanical equipment, which will be the air handlers, the compressor, package units, as well as the exhaust hood mushroom. So none of that will be seen by the neighborhood. In the back of the house, the south elevation, that area I was just referring to is this area right here. Where in the restaurant we have tall ceilings about 18 feet. In the kitchen we have 10-foot ceilings, so that allows us to do a parapet and hide the equipment. Here is our roll-up door that hides our air-conditioned trash room right here, and service doors to the kitchen and storage. This is a typical wall section showing the masonry construction, tall windows. In fact, they go up to about 13 feet off the floor. We have louvers on the walls, again referencing the louvered shutters throughout the neighborhood. And then our Techno Wood feature elements have a concealed LED light source, and you'll see that in the renderings. Here's our roof plan, and it's a flat roof, 3-ply modified bitumen or TPO, and then dropped down over the kitchen, as I pointed out. This is our 6-foot high parapet, mechanical equipment, exhaust hood, all concealed from the neighbors. The signage on the building are 3 H's for the H Restaurant Tampa, made out of colored plexiglass with LED lighting within, framed by aluminum surrounds. You'll see those better on the renderings that are coming up. Stay tuned. Our Techno Wood, here's a sample of it. It's basically aluminum tubing that has a thin veneer of real wood with a premium coating with a 20-year warranty. So that's our window surrounds. I mentioned the black marble. The cement plaster will be an off-white. The exterior floor in the covered outside dining area will be a Star Galaxy granite. The lighting that can be seen in the covered outside dining will have square black recessed cans in the black aluminum ceiling. We have some simple black sconces on the walls. We have exterior fans to keep the air moving, again, black. And our parking light pole fixtures are LED, very simple, as inconspicuous as possible. We're going to light up the trees in the building with black LED landscape lights. The entrance to the parking lot is going to be flanked by 2 light bollards, again in black. And we're using standard black aluminum window framing and exterior of the covered structure for outside dining. These are our entry doors. They are automatic sliding bypass doors with big side lights. So there'll be a lot of transparency in this restaurant. And here's a perspective. This is from Burns Park along Hills Avenue and Howard Avenue. You can see our featured Techno wood window surrounds, also surrounds the entry. And we have a floating canopy, black metal, with the recessed cans. Along Hills Avenue is our covered outside dining, and you can see our horizontal reveals to reference the clapboards in the neighborhood. Here's a view looking south from Burns Park, and you can see our outdoor dining area, our entry feature, our canopy, and the valet parking will be in the foreground. That concludes my presentation. Look forward to your questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fleischman. We'll move on to the staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Avila, I'm staff with Historic Preservation. Staff's finding that this application is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines. We reviewed this plan on June 20th and had the following conditions attached to it on the staff report on page 4. There was one letter that was submitted to staff prior to the hearing. It's in your packet, and I did give that letter to the agent prior to the public hearing. Our concerns are how this new request would fit into the district. Howard is a commercial corridor, but abutting that corridor is a residential community that has been involved with this location for many years. So our concerns are bullet items. We're addressing a lot of those items that were addressed this evening. Just to hit on a couple that need additional conversation is the hardscape that surrounds the property. How does the pedestrian experience come from the curbing to the sidewalk, the parkway, and into the private property? So if they have additional information on that, it could be addressed and discussed a little more thoroughly. They did talk about the vegetation. Just so that you know, along Howard Avenue, there's power lines there. They had talked about the incorporation of crepe myrtles, which would probably be a species that is sensitive to that environment as well. And then lastly, touching upon the ADA approach, they have the handicap ramp in the front. We would like for them to revisit that or have a discussion this evening to see if it could be integrated into the overall design concept a little bit more thoroughly. I'll be here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. So we'll move on to public comment. If there is anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and speak either for or against, please do so at this time. Remember, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and spell it for the record. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pamela Jo Hatley. I'm an attorney, and I represent the Historic Hyde Park Neighborhood Association. The Historic Hyde Park Neighborhood Association just wants to express that they appreciate the applicant working with the community. They did have a community meeting that was very informative. They especially appreciate the applicant's efforts to address community concerns, in particular in closing the garbage receptacles within the building and air-conditioned space. They appreciate that commitment and the commitment to restore the 1924 home and submit it to be a contributing structure and to work within the existing PD entitlements. Hyde Park, the Historic Hyde Park Neighborhood Association appreciates those commitments and believes that they're very important for this project. The association doesn't take a position for or against, but based on the information that was presented tonight and presented to Historic Hyde Park Community or Neighborhood Association and the community, there are no objections. No objections.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Next.
My name's Dennis Van. I reside at 1409 South DeSoto Avenue. Here's a copy of the existing site plan, the older site plan. There's a note in yellow there, which we'd like to add to the new site plan, which states the restaurant and lounge areas and use be concurrent. Hours of operation 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. This section here on Hills, they're saying it's existing pavers. It looks like it was an old driveway with existing pavers. Yeah, they should rework this whole area. Also, this area that's asphalt along this same, right next to this, which is here, this is existing, oh, sorry. This is existing asphalt with a pretty sharp gradient, which I believe is a hazard and a lawsuit waiting to happen. It just forces people not even to walk down this street. They walk out into the middle of the street. This should all be replaced with a new sidewalk with just like other new construction projects. If you build a house with no sidewalks in the street, you're still required to construct a sidewalk in front of your house. You can build a sidewalk with a curb and the street parking, similar to the Village and Fresh Kitchen. And they still have, I believe on Swan, they have the street parking with a curb, but they're still doing valet. So just get this cleaned up is my only concern. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. I'm George Deacon. Live at 1408 South DeSoto, about a block from the restaurant. We've been there since 1992. First concern, or first thought is to appreciate what the applicant's doing. It's been an eyesore, and the previous owner was not very cooperative with the neighborhood in many areas. We appreciate what they're doing and really look forward to working with them and having a successful project that really complements the neighborhood. My first comment, Dennis just covered, is in the old PD, and I likewise have a copy of it, where it talks about the hours of operation. We'd like to see that in the PD. The old operator, even though the hours of operation were in the PD, he expanded his hours. And so, for the record, we'd like to see what the hours are going to be similar to the old PD. I'm a traffic engineer, and my other concern is with the valet parking. I know you need valet parking. The previous company was they parked on the street, even though they had off-site parking, reserved off-site parking. They parked on the street because it's closest. It's easier for them. And I remarked to one of the applicants, since we're a block away, I remarked to one of the valet parkers who parked right in front of our house. I said, "Why are you parking here? It's a restaurant park. You know, you're a restaurant valet." And he says, "It's a public street. Anybody can park here." But I can't go over and park to his reserved parking. So, you know, we found that with the Hyde Park house. The workers down there, they've got reserved parking, but they park what's closest. So I don't know how to enforce that. It's particularly a problem on our street because we've got the median And so there's not a big turning room radius to turn into the driveway. Technically, people are supposed to park 10 foot from the driveway, but most of them don't, so it's difficult to get in. And you have to back up across the curb, the granite curb, start on your tires. I've blown 2 tires on the granite curb, so that's my concern. But I appreciate what they're doing and working with the neighborhood, and look forward to a mutual cooperative effort. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone, please?
Good evening. My name is Dominic Graziano. I live at 1407 South DeSoto Avenue, where I've lived for about 25 years. It's this property right here, so it abuts the parking area of the project. Historically, we've had significant issues with the restaurant, and I don't want to suffer from recency bias to think that the future is going to be like the past, but one of the most important issues for us is going to be the noise. In the past, because the restaurant would stay open late and they'd have music, we ended up having significant problems with noise in the neighborhood, and especially where I live. In the original PD, it says that there shall be no live music around the pool outside. Well, what they did was they had the live musicians inside, they opened up the doors, and then they put speakers on the outside. So what I would like to see imposed on this applicant is that they agree to no music outside, not just live music, but not expanding music out into where they're going to have this dining. Because what happens is later in the evening, the manager, whoever, this has been our experience, when the people are out there, they start cranking up the music and we can hear it. And that has been a significant problem in the past. I appreciate, as my neighbor said, what they're trying to do here, and I really would like to see a successful project. The building as it stands is an eyesore with a lot of critters running in and out of it all the time. So we're happy to see that taken care of, and I think their proposal looks reasonable otherwise. But this issue of the noise is a big, big concern. Also, this was the first I learned of this, but the mechanical equipment up on the roof, I think, I don't know what that's going to present in terms of noise issues too. It wasn't a problem, as I recall, in the past because of its location. Whether it is now, I don't know. But I would ask you to include in this applicant's requirements that they limit any music to inside the structure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, Deb Hargraves. I am 1405 South DeSoto, directly attached to the proposed property. I haven't seen any south or east renderings of the proposed structure yet, but my concern is the 2 feet distance between the structure and the property line. This north side of my house is already encroaching on my property, the current fence that is there, which they are aware of and we have talked about. I also just was wondering about the rain runoff water, kind of where will that go and what will that look like when it is so close to my property. And the last concern is that my oak trees, I have 3 oak trees right there. One is on the north line of the property, about 4 feet from my property line, and one is on the west side or the east side of their building, west side of my property, and that is about 2 feet from my property line. Sure, yeah, so I'm right here, so I have an oak tree right here that's about 4 feet from the property line, and another one right here that's about 2 feet from the property line, and just nervous if we're knocking down that structure and rebuilding, what that kind of looks like for those oak trees and their safety. And then I think that's kind of about it, just gutters, runoff, and oak trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Have you been sworn in, ma'am?
I was just gonna say, I've
Okay.
not been sworn.
You can come forward and she'll swear you in.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you be providing today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Hi, my name is Sandra Lopez, and I live at 1409 South DeSoto Avenue. And in concept, I do support the plan, because as the other neighbors have said, the current building there is a complete eyesore, and I feel like one of the key things is that we do need a sidewalk, because we've not been able to walk there for over a decade, and it's kind of a dangerous area. And Hyde Park, one of the appeals is the walkability and the ability to walk, all the streets. So that's one of my concerns. The curb and the parking, like George said, that even though there are spots for valet to pull into, they inevitably create two rows. Not only the row that they have for parking on valet, but on the street, there's like another row of vehicles. And I'm not saying that they're going to do that, but that has been our experience living through multiple restaurants in the past. And so I, again, in concept, support the process as long as they look at these areas and they advocate, and then you advocate for the neighborhood in making sure that all the guidelines are met. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any others in the audience that'd like to come forward? Okay, seeing no others, we'll go ahead with commissioners asking questions of the applicant agent. So if someone would like to come to the podium, we'll begin asking questions. So before we get started on questions from my fellow commissioners, I think it would be really good to talk about a couple of things that we heard in some of the public commentary. I know that the PD has been sort of closed. We're only here talking about certificate of appropriateness. But I do think it's important for us, even us as the commissioners, to really understand what the plan is for the parking concerns. And definitely we want to hear a little bit more about the landscaping, hardscaping components, and really what the extent of the scope is when it comes to the property line outwards to the public realm, right? At least to the curbs. We would typically want to ask questions about that anyway. So I think those two major things, if we could just hit those first, and then we'll go through a line of individual questions, if that's
Sure.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Well, we're talking about the PD. One thing that did come up is hours of operation. That was in the 1990 PD. It's in the 2014 one too. So I don't think there's anything to really do about that.
Can't hear, please.
So
Are we
there were-
having problems with the mic? Because I can hear this way.
We can't hear back here.
Dennis, can
So-
you confirm whether or not you can hear it? Okay, thank you.
So the 1990 PD that was referenced had hours of operation restrictions. Those were brought forward to the 2014 PD that's currently in effect, and what code enforcement would base any type of enforcement decisions upon, and that's right here. And the hours of operation are listed right there. On parking, there's a combination of on-site and off-site parking. There's a requirement to obtain a 99-year lease from the adjacent dermatology office. We have that. It's been approved by the city attorney's office. So there is a combination of on-street, or on-site and off-site, i.e. across the street parking, that we have secured, and we have worked with the city attorney's office to substantiate that. I mentioned the right-of-way permit we're committing to getting. It is worth noting that there already really is language on the face of the site plan addressing valet parking. And so, as you alluded, as Chairman alluded to at the beginning of this hearing, there is a limited scope to what you are deciding here, of course. But we do want to be transparent in answering questions. I think the property owner understands that there was some unpleasant history with this site. And to try to mend that gap, that's why the community outreach effort started, I think, as early as it did. And I think they're going to take these thoughts and concerns into consideration, because they're going to be operating a business here. And if it's the bane of the neighbor's existence, that's a problem for everyone. But I do want to be transparent that there are limits to what this board has before it right now to impose any type of new requirements on zoning-esque things like noise, like stormwater, like transportation. But in a very lawyerly, long-winded answer to your simple question, admittedly, we will have a combination of on-site and across-the-street parking, and we expect that the across-the-street parking is where the valet will be. In fact, our lease requires that it not be customer parking, it's for valet only. And then you had some questions perhaps about property boundaries. I might ask Saul.
Well, the other part of the discussion to start the question period was, we heard some discussion pieces or concerns about the hardscape, landscape conditions that exist, how the project is going to insert itself and integrate with the existing conditions, right? At some point, you have to use the sidewalk that's in front of your property, right? Your guests have to. You can park cars anywhere you want to, but you still have to get out of your car and amble right to your doorway. And you certainly don't want to face any lawsuits yourself, right? Your client doesn't want to. So those are the conditions we would want to understand anyway. So could we talk a little bit about the hardscape and all of those conditions at the north side as well as the west side? And we'll move on to specific questions.
I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Fleischman now.
Thank you. Saul Fleischman. Yes, let's talk about sidewalk hardscape first. In fact, we started that process already in providing a new sidewalk along those parallel parking spots on West Hills Avenue. And we'll work with the city, and if the city doesn't provide a new sidewalk, we will, because we definitely care about the safety of our neighbors and our customers. So that's definitely an area of concern. And same thing on Howard Avenue. The city's going to make us replace, repair for safety, and we'll cooperate with the city on those items. We also have it's not shown very well here. Our second means of egress from the restaurant is right here, and we've taken a new sidewalk to the right-of-way. So it's all part of our schemes. Let's talk about stormwater, because Deb Hargraves had a concern about that. Working with the city of Tampa, we have to either contain stormwater on our site or pipe it to the city's stormwater system at the street. So since land is so valuable, it's probably not practical to have a retention pond on our site. So we'll be collecting all the stormwater through internal roof drains, bring them down the building, underground, to the city's stormwater system. So the city will not allow any developer, homeowner to drain stormwater to the neighboring properties. So that would be all part of our city permitting. Deb was concerned about her trees near our property. We'll be working with the City of Tampa Natural Resources and ensure that our construction won't damage her trees, her roots, if they come across our property. So I think that kind of covers all the issues.
I think we'll go ahead and start with Commissioner Stone.
Well, I'd like to continue with that on the hardscape part. I do note that, at least from your renderings, that part of this proposal is some feature pavements at the entrance.
Yes.
And in your dining patio, as well as associated with the handicap ramp. Let's start with just the nature of the feature itself. What was not presented tonight was a nature of what is this material? Does it have a color bearing in terms of your design? But that's another issue entirely. But what is this material, and how does this fit with your scheme?
Yeah, let me bring that back up for you. It's in there. It's a black granite. It might be a porcelain granite.
Would this material have some sort of bearing to what you're doing on your elevations as well?
Yes, it does. It ties in with the black granite on the elevations.
Associated with that is the nature of your ADA access element, the ADA ramp. Is this ramp going to be substantial enough so that it would require handrails?
It is, the ADA requires handrails on all ramps.
Under, steeper than 1 in 20?
Yes, it's 1 in 12, that's correct.
Okay.
So it will have handrails. The client would like to even do glass rails. It's a very upscale restaurant and a very upscale handicap ramp.
Because what we don't have right now is a proposal shown in your elevations or your renderings as to what this element will look like. Because it has this certain box-like quality at your ground floor, at the main corner, at your main entrance. And it has a bearing as to how that whole thing wants to work.
Well, it's all tied into the same materials, the same contemporary architectural style. In fact, I mean, it's very unusual for a client to want to invest that kind of money on the handicap ramp. It's going to have porcelain granite flooring. It's going to have metal handrails that are probably, we haven't picked them out yet, but it's probably going to be aluminum or stainless steel since they're outside. And this one actually is a slightly different than the original one because the city asked us to look at alternatives. And as you can, the original one was a straight ramp. This one is much better because a handicapped person can use the same paving as everybody else, come up, across, and back, and end up at the landing at the front doors. So they don't have to go around or in the back or the side. It's right there at the front.
Do you have a rendering or image of that corner of the building in the daylight? Because these renderings at night are so dark, it's hard to really tell what's going on with that
I
piece.
do, but I don't believe it shows this new handicap
The
ramp.
handicap.
But I can show you the,
It's also on the exterior elevations, but it's really difficult to understand
but-
what it's
yeah,
gonna feel
just one
like.
second.
Yeah, the west elevation looks like it's it's the old diagonal scheme.
Yeah, it does not show the ramp. It shows the H there. Sorry. So there'll be some landscaping, but again, it's a very high-end ramp. Any restaurant having that is really first class.
Was there any consideration to look at more landscape around that ramp as it does its turn there, when it comes out of that entry portal
Yeah.
piece?
We have no problem adding more landscape there, soften it.
I mean, we understand that the monument sign on the ground wants to be highlighted, but any way that we can minimize the impact of, and we understand the need, obviously, but any way that we can minimize that impact from an aesthetic view.
We'll work on it some more.
Okay. Additional questions for the applicant, agent? Anyone?
Mr. Fleischman, could you go over the windows that are proposed? It seemed in the drawings that I reviewed earlier that there were, that the windows, that there was a capability for windows surrounding the garden to drop down, and so the garden would be completely open. And in the same way, it looked like perhaps the windows in the tall elements along Howard could slide open. Is that correct?
Originally, there was going to be guillotine-type windows on the covered exterior dining area. We've removed those. It's completely open now. There are no operable windows in the building.
Okay.
It's all climate controlled.
All right, thank you. And I also wanted to ask about the Techno wood.
Yes.
That doesn't seem to be anything that is present in the district at this time. Am I correct there?
You're probably correct about real wood. It's real wood veneer on aluminum backing. There may not be that, but there's lots of real wood.
Can we look at that sample again? 'Cause I didn't think it looked like real wood. It didn't.
Yes.
No, it did not. So you are stating for the record that it's real wood.
I'm stating for the record, it's real wood right off their website. It's hard to believe, I know.
30 seconds.
But, you know, you're seeing that all over town, all over the country. You know, they're building all kinds of buildings with this thin veneer and some sort of miracle coating, and gives a 20-year warranty. Google it, Techno wood.
Oh, well, I will definitely research it.
Right.
You know I will.
We're doing two three-story homes right on the water. They're both under construction, and they both have a lot of similar, it's not that brand, but a lot of similar.
We're testing your sample, sorry.
Have at it.
It's the Rowland test.
Certainly one of the better ones I've seen, but I don't know. Anyway, okay, moving on. Any follow-up questions to that line of?
I'd just like you to go over the height of the area that has the horizontal striations in it.
Mm-hmm.
The height of that, and then the height of the principal sort of frame over the entrance door, and then the height of the windows along Howard, the Techno wood frames along those.
Sure,
On Howard.
sure. Well, let's look at the wall section again for that one. But to answer your first question, the horizontal striations go up to about 27 feet 2 inches. The wall section through the big windows, again, it's 13 feet from the floor to the top of the windows. There's a 3-foot knee wall with shutter-like material on the outside, made of powder-coated aluminum. And what was your third question, Dan?
Okay, 27'2".
I think it was the entry portal.
Oh, yeah,
Entry portal,
yeah.
because it's a little higher than
And
that,
and I
right?
believe those doors are 10 feet tall.
Right, I'm not asking about the doors, but the whole frame over the entrance, which
Oh.
seems to be the highest element on the building.
The 27.4 is the highest. 27.2.
That's not what your
Can
your
we look at the
elevation shows.
rendering?
No, you're right, it does look a
Yeah.
little higher. Hold on on a second. Yeah. Well, I will affirm it will not exceed 35 feet. It is below that.
And that is the limitation in the PD, correct, for the height for the building?
I believe that's a height limitation in the district.
I know, but sometimes we get PDs that are allowed higher, so.
Oh, I
We
don't
know that
know
the
what the
PD is
PD
set, so we want to be sure that we understand that we're within those, we would prefer to be in the design guideline limits, but sometimes the PDs are allowed more.
I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you, Dan.
I'm going to go back to the handicap ramp again. Being the corner piece of the intersection of these two streets, that corner is the most important corner of the building. And to me, your logic of wanting anyone who needs a handicap ramp to be able to also to use the main entrance to the building and not have to use a side entrance or a back entrance, I fully understand that. But it seems to me that the corner of the intersection of these two streets is not the right place to put a handicap ramp. It would, to me, it would be mirrored on the other side of the main entrance where your outdoor, where that extra little bump out of the outdoor dining area is.
Just what I was thinking, John.
To take it away from the corner.
Yeah.
And that allows you to do a little more with landscaping, a little more with signage on the corner itself.
Yeah.
That seems to me to make sense. So you'd consider that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Makes sense to me, too.
Okay. What is the finished floor height above, I guess, the sidewalk proposed? And to need a handicap ramp, obviously, you're raising the floor slab up considerably.
The survey we have says the height of the finished floor is 20 feet above sea level.
Okay.
We're not sure that's accurate. It's probably true for the residents, but we're not sure it's accurate. The elevation along hills is about 17 feet. As it goes around to Howard, it drops down to 16.
Right, it goes down the hill.
It goes downhill.
Right.
We're looking at, and I talked to the civil engineer yesterday about this, at about 18.5 feet for the finished floor elevation, because that gives us about 6 inches to a foot in the parking lot up to the rear door.
To make up.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So if assume the average is about 17 feet in the front, you'd have 1.5 feet to handle, which is a long way in
At 1 to 12.
Yeah, at 1 to 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2 runs of 9 feet or whatever.
Yeah. Would y'all be opposed if we put a handicap lift instead of a ramp?
I think we'd have to debate that among ourselves.
Yeah.
Certainly, we've seen those in historic districts, but we would have to have that conversation after we close them.
Well, if a ramp gets to a certain length, it's not good for anybody.
Right.
It doesn't look good, it's not good for the handicapped people.
But it seems to me that you do have some flexibility in setting what the finished slab height is.
Yeah, just
Are
to
you-
make sure it needs to be 1.5 feet above the crown of the road, that's not a problem.
And there's no FEMA consideration here, right?
No
New
FEMA consideration.
rules?
Right.
Okay.
All right. Would you consider any kind of, I know the kitchen wing has a higher parapet than everything else, as you
That's
explained, to hide visually. And there's nothing in the PD regarding acoustical or any decibel levels or anything else like that? Is there anything
We're looking-
described in there?
We're looking to just to carry the block up, so it's gonna have very good acoustic,
Right, that's what I'm just wondering if there's a way to establish some sort of acoustic baffling or anything else like that of any mechanical noise. Because, I mean, HVAC units and especially kitchen exhaust fans do create a tremendous amount of noise.
we know they're gonna be a heck of a lot better than Gordon Davis had, because he had louvers.
Yeah, it's, we all, I think we all acknowledge that the previous restaurant was less than desirable in many ways.
Mr. Fleischman, can we look at your south elevation while we're talking about this, please? Because if you have it in a drawing format, correct, that you can write on with a pen or a pencil?
Yeah,
On the elevation, can you take a heavier line and outline the closest plane as related to the south? So I'm looking at the site plan and the south elevation.
so here, I've outlined in orange the mechanical and exhaust vent area
That's on the rooftop, right, that
on the
area?
rooftop, yeah.
Okay, and then when we look at the south elevation that you had underneath that, can you highlight the west side of that south projection and the east side of
Yeah,
the?
but
So I can understand what the closest plane edges are.
I'm gonna shade in, this may or may not be answering your question, but
So is that the limit of the roof? That's when we look at that orangey yellow shade that you
Yeah.
just did, the hatching,
yeah.
the bottom of that, is that the roof?
The bottom of that is the roof over the kitchen.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So the units would be really contained within a walled area.
Yes, I testified, it's gonna be about 6 feet above the roof.
Okay. And then, do you have an access ladder from inside or outside? Because I saw on the roof plan it
We have
said,
we have an access from outside.
and it's a ladder on the wall?
It's, yeah, yeah.
So, I'm asking this because you're south, I'm trying to get to your south elevation. You have two doors, but there's only one on your plan, and there's no ladder.
There's a storage room shown on one, not the plan you had, the last plan.
So is the elevation more up to date or the site plan?
Is the elevation, the elevation is up to date.
Okay, so there are two man doors, then your roll-up door. And
That second man door is contingent upon the final layout of the kitchen.
Okay,
Yeah.
but there is somewhere in there a ladder.
It's
On the
probably gonna be a
wall.
wall ladder.
Right, understood.
Yeah, yes.
Trying to understand, because we're talking about certificate of appropriateness here, and what your neighborhood partners are going to see when they amble through their neighborhood, right?
Is it interior or exterior, the ladder?
It's exterior, it's already been
Right.
confirmed it's
Yeah,
exterior.
but this is the back of the house. Yeah.
Well, it's back of the house, but you've got a sidewalk to the west, and unless you're putting fencing around this entire back side, your neighborhood partners will be walking along the west side of your property, of your owner's property, and seeing all the beautiful accoutrements that go to the back of house of a restaurant, right?
They're not gonna see any garbage. That's the good news.
It's great. Yeah, I know, I get it. But they will see a freezer cooler and potentially a ladder. Just trying to get a sense of, you know, where this thing is located, how far up the wall it goes, if it goes all the way up,
No, no.
you know, if it projects past the parapet, all those sorts of things. Well, that's not for us to say, and I'm trying to get that out of the applicant's agent, right? That's what I'm trying to understand is, where is this ladder? What is the intended design? How much further above the parapet does it project? Does it have a protection cage around it? All those sorts of things that you know go with these service ladders, right?
And it will have a protection cage at the bottom to keep unauthorized people from going up.
Right, right, okay. So there's a ladder of some sort.
Can I ask another question?
Oh,
regarding that?
absolutely.
Is there a reason why an internal ladder and a hatch isn't being utilized? Because it's pretty unsightly, no matter how well these are done, these are pretty unsightly. And this isn't really, it's back of house, but it's to a parking lot that's completely visible from the street and the sidewalk and from the neighbors.
The answer to that is we are extremely tight on square footage. We have to go by the 2014 PD, and we'd have to dedicate a space that you could access to get up to that hatch. But I mean, if that's a condition, we'll figure it out.
What surrounds this air-conditioned trash room?
Excuse me?
What, on your plan here, just trying to get an idea, so you've got this other room that potentially could give you access to that roof from this.
If we relocated it under the lower roof, that would give us access. As long as the, yeah.
Are you doing lift out, or you're pulling your intent is to pull the units out and then lift out?
Yeah, pull
Okay.
out.
Are you getting it by putting it inside the trash room, putting the roof hatch inside the trash room?
So not knowing exactly, it looks like the ceiling height inside the trash room would be the same ceiling height as the restaurant, is that correct? Or is that gonna be a lower roof height?
No, that would be under the higher roof.
So I guess kind of what I was asking was, in that case, you'd almost have to have a stairwell with a landing that had a walk door onto the lower roof. So,
Or go over
You could still have a ladder, you could still have an internal access ladder that gets into that roof. There are ways to design it, right? There is an option.
Yeah.
That's the main question.
Yeah.
Is there an option where you could take the ladder and put it in interior somehow? Whether it was through a storage room in the kitchen area that gives you a hatch up onto the roof, or through that garbage space that allows you to get into the roof from
We'll
there.
figure it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is an option. That's
Yeah.
that's the answer. How they figure it out, they figure it out. Okay. Other questions?
is there any railing proposed for the outdoor dining area on the front of the restaurant? I know you got-
Yes.
Okay.
It'd be black aluminum railing. For the sense of containment.
So is that the railing that we see in what you proposed?
Probably not.
No, that's for the framing, so you don't have a sample here tonight for that?
No.
Okay.
But it certainly, it won't be ugly and it won't be inappropriate, and it's not required for code reasons, because we're less than 30 inches above grade. It's purely decorative.
Okay.
So I have a question. We were talking a little bit about this back area. Is there an existing fence along the property at the east side and the south side where that parking is now?
There is a couple of existing fences.
Are they the owners or are they neighbors?
I think they're the neighbors.
Is there any gaps in that?
Any what?
Any gaps in the fencing?
Oh, gaps. There will be a gap, that's why we suggested a hedge. I mean, I show it on the,
Is that what the hedge is on the, sort of the east side of that parking area?
yeah.
I guess you could just,
There's one that apparently is masonry.
so the intent is basically use the soft landscaping to provide more of that enclosure
Right.
feel rather than putting in fencing
So
anywhere.
part of it is masonry, which is on the north part. On the south part is a chain link fence with black Venetian blind blades stuck through them.
Those are the existing conditions?
That's the existing.
Okay.
Yeah, and then along the south part of the parking lot is a white vinyl fence.
Okay. But there's no intent to add any fencing material to the project, to the
Correct.
property? Okay.
Correct.
What about main service to the building? Is that on all interior? Electrical, fire, piping, all of that stuff?
We haven't gotten that far, but
Okay.
that would certainly be our desire, if it was available to have it underground.
Is there any indication on the current site about the water assembly? I assume there's one already on site. I was looking at the drawing, at the images to see. Well, I'm sure we can add some language into the motion should we move forward. Okay. All right. Other questions for the applicant? Mr. Myers?
How was the decision made to limit the horizontal striations in the stucco? And you, along the, I guess it's sort of the southeast,
Yeah,
there, along the parking lot,
yeah,
you've wrapped that treatment, the more elaborate treatment around the corner, and then you've stopped it.
yeah.
And,
Cost in back of the house again, yeah,
mhm.
yeah. All are gonna be painted the same color, yeah.
Well, most of the houses in Hyde Park that have that horizontal siding on them have it going all the way around the house. I can't imagine that it is a limiting factor.
Any other questions?
No further questions.
Okay. Mr. Sorry, Brent. Any other questions for the applicant?
I have none.
Mr. Prokop? No, I have no others as well, so if you'd like to come forward and make a rebuttal, you do have 5 minutes to respond to anything that was either,
Okay, do you want? No, I'm good. This is a great project for the historic district and for the city of Tampa, and I sincerely hope you approve it.
Thank you. We'll now close the public portion of the hearing, and the commission will discuss the case. All right. Would anyone like to discuss any points or?
You brought up some good points about the existing perimeter fencing, walls, adjacent to all the existing, residential properties. And I don't even know what's to the south. Is the south residential as well?
Did they not make notation of that on that one?
The apartment building,
Okay.
or condo, whatever
Yeah.
it is.
I'm just
That's
wondering-
got a vinyl fence.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if certainly within our purview, I think, to require upgrades or at least, improvements or clarification to the fencing that abuts a commercial property from a residential property. In fact, I think it's required.
Actually, I think in any motion, we would have to, remind that any landscaping and fencing requirements required under the zoning, chapter 27,
Right.
is to be incorporated in the
Yeah.
project.
And that would also go towards like defining the hedge. Like what is the hedge? You can have a 2-foot tall boxwood hedge. You can have a 8-foot tall hedge of another species. I think that needs to be,
Again, I think
Defined.
chapter 27 speaks to all of that,
okay.
yeah.
The backflow preventer, is also, that's important to be located if there isn't one on the property. Because I think most of the existing walls are right on the street front, and I've never seen one there. I've been by.
Yeah,
many
and that
places.
doesn't mean they might not have to upgrade their utilities for that, right?
Right.
Because certainly our codes have changed,
Codes
we've
have changed.
incorporated some new
Yeah.
ordinances and things like that. And again, that is again us referencing back to the code, that those sorts of appurtenances need to be considered and
Right.
properly screened.
Okay.
Improperly screened, and that can be coordinated with staff.
Yeah.
Correct.
And the elevations include planters or show planters, so the planters, I think we could ask if they be, the planters and that railing type, whatever that is along the outdoor dining, needs to be clarified somewhat too, since that's right on the street.
Didn't they have that in the materials list, the
Not
planters?
the railings.
Not the railing, well, they had it in their drawings, it was a really small note, and he clarified that they wanted to go with the glass panel railings. Yeah, you're right, there's no information on the planters, so.
So I think we can, those things are still some outstanding items to be clarified.
So we also have, we talked about the access ladder.
The access ladder to be internal, not
Yeah,
external.
the ramp to be flipped, reconsidered,
Yeah.
right?
Reconsidered in some way. That is a very, very busy, corner, the corner of Howard and Hills, from a pedestrian standard, and there's a lot of stuff going here. I don't know entirely if that ramp can be best relocated in some fashion, but I think it definitely needs to be better integrated with the architecture.
I agree, and I think by flipping it, which I agree with our fellow commissioner, I think by flipping it, there has to be due consideration, and I know Mr. Fleischman and his team will do so, to think about how the architecture and that particular element work together in a way that's more meaningful and also addresses the condition of the street as one passes by it. Especially if the outdoor dining stays where it is, you're also gonna wanna consider how that interrelates, right?
Mhm.
So,
There's the metals, there's the glass.
well,
there's
it's all the
material.
spatial considerations too, right? So, I think the architecture will definitely have to respond to that, and there'll be some exchanges in that next iteration. What were the other,
The other question
elements?
I'd like to bring up too is that also slated for this corner is some sort of ground monument in terms of signage.
And that's right there by the,
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's almost superfluous in what you think about the signage that's on the building itself. Again, it's just something else taking up real estate.
Well, there's signage codes.
we have signage codes, but an on-ground monument sign is, you know, it's acceptable. I think there were a lot of, points made by the applicant agents that, you know, space is a premium, they're really tight on space, they, you know, they need to be able to use the property as most beneficial to their client, and we get all that, and the PD permits certain things, but yeah, maybe it does seem a little bit busy. There are 3 H's in this corner rendering. Maybe there could be some reconsideration of the signage package. But in terms of the language, I mean, I have no problem with the signage language, I don't think.
No, I mean, the signage language works with the whole of the building. It's a very contemporary addition to the Hyde Park area, the commercial core. It's very similar in some respect to other more recent commercial and high-rise developments that
I do appreciate,
permitted.
I appreciate in this project that from a scale perspective and a breakdown of the mass, that the outdoor dining element offers a way to step the mass down as it moves back into the residential single-family components, especially with the existing house on the property being nearby, and it kind of relates to the porch feature of that particular structure.
I am concerned that the elements along Howard are too high. It's a very high building, and I don't see any reason for it to be as high as it is.
I think perhaps part of it probably would have been good to see some contextual in situ kind of rendering that really showed what the project, how the project related to the neighborhood overall and the street view of Howard, because it's changed so much, it's hard to really think about what's going on there now. But when we think about it from a historic perspective, commercially, you know, the reference to period structures, if we were to talk about the 1920s, what is that like versus the 1950s, right, when this non-contributing was placed? So, I don't know what the right answer is to that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we need more information. There's a terrific park across the street. There's a whole, you know, everything that fronts that park already has a height, and many of it, you know, much of it is not going to change.
Right.
They're contributing structures. I just feel like this one, you know, for no reason, is going up to 30 feet.
Did you want to ask another question of the applicant, or do you want to keep it closed? This is your opportunity to ask another question if you feel like it warrants it. If not, we'll just keep debating,
we'll
we'll
just
keep
discuss.
discussing it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other concerns?
I mean, I think from a commercial standpoint, that Howard Avenue is building up. I mean, there's just new buildings. We heard one a couple months ago of re-skinning the, where Bella's is.
Where Bella's.
And, you know, that's within a block or so of this property.
Yeah, Bella's a different situation. It's been a commercialized
This has
block.
This has been a restaurant here for
Yeah, but
decades, too.
it doesn't have
But it hasn't been
the
30 feet
immediacy.
tall.
It doesn't have the immediacy of 3 single-family houses abutting it along a property line.
On the
There's an
backside.
alley between them.
On the backside.
There's an alley
Yeah,
between them.
I understand that. And again, yeah, we don't have any context on what's going on adjacent currently in this presentation. but we know there's 3-story condominiums to the south.
Then 2 big towers.
And keep in
Yeah,
mind, they,
2 big towers, and then as we go north, we've already been presented with other larger 2- and 3-story developments as you get closer to
Some of
Burns.
them older, some of them newer.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the height and the mass
well, and keep it
along
in,
Howard.
they could have brought something up here that went to 35 feet per zoning. That doesn't mean it got approved, but they could have brought it.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you get it too squatty, what's that gonna do to the look of the building?
Yeah, because the existing property is really low and squatty and kind of just disappears, and, you know, you wouldn't know what it was unless there was a sign in front of it. This, you know, it establishes its commercial zoning, it establishes, you know, a commercial frontage on Howard.
And I think as long as the outdoor dining space, covered outdoor dining space remains at the scale it is and
Yeah.
remains as a component of the
Yeah.
design, it helps break down the mass as it moves back.
And I like how the you know, I guess these Techno-wood
Frames.
frames, you know, kind of break up the elevation as if they were, you know, small townhouses or row houses or something else like that, if you were gonna think of it as a residential, you know,
And that's where
motif or an homage to a residential.
And that's where your height
motif.
is. I mean, that's your highest point.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the mass.
I appreciate
I think
that the rhythm of those pieces really
Yeah.
does break down the facade on
Yeah.
Howard, because we don't get a lot of that
Yeah,
in the newer commercial.
With,
It's not that monolithic.
yeah, without the difference,
Yeah.
we possibly are having a different conversation.
Oh, absolutely. I think so.
okay.
So we I think one thing too is, I know that they stated that they would talk and they would coordinate with the city about the oaks in the one property closest to the corner, the inside corner. I think we need to make sure that should a motion move forward, that there is some language in there about the coordination and reconsideration of the design should it be discovered that they, you know, are impacting the oak's health, right? Some way. I mean, obviously they'd have to do that, but
I'm thinking that's gonna fall under natural resources anyway.
I agree. I think that's exactly where that's gonna go. And they'll have to chime in and find out
so we
what they
probably
wanna
don't need
do.
to add anything in there, because
No,
it's part of the
That's
review
part of the permitting
process.
Yeah,
process.
that tree
Right.
shows up on the tree survey, they're gonna have to stay so far away from it.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I can't think of any other items.
The only
we
other
need to
thing I can think
consider?
of adding is we have this memorandum from Gardner Brewer Hudson regarding the 2 items that they want to have additionally proposed as conditions for approval. One, the obtaining of the contributing structure designation for the attached property located on DeSoto Avenue, as well as number 2, obtaining a right-of-way permit from the city of Tampa with coordination from city mobility to regulate valet parking along Hills Avenue.
Agree, those definitely need to be incorporated. I just want to go down the list of staff report really quickly. There was a comment about multiple wall sections. We often see this, that we're not getting enough wall sections. Let's make sure that that comment is incorporated. If we have a motion to approve with conditions. Landscape plan, I would think that that would be a component of the permit process, but let's make sure that we highlight that, I think. And then the signage package. It's always a concern about what those final details are, especially since these are lit, to ensure that there's no light spillage into the neighborhood, into the neighboring properties, the residential.
What about the hardscape?
Oh, that's right. I do think that we need, well, the hardscape plan needs to come, but there also should be some notations within the site plan about the grading and the elevations. And obviously that comes through the permitting process, but we need to ensure from us, from the historic, the ARC's perspective that, that the hardscape is in keeping with the materials and the detailing qualities within the district. Pardon?
If I may
Yes.
interrupt, the signage is included, it's part of the PD.
Right.
So anything you want to state regarding the signage would be a recommendation because it's already included in the PD.
Oh, okay.
Just to.
So it's difficult to know what's in the PD because we don't have a copy of the PD
right.
to review. And if we can't, I know you know this, but if there is a PD that we know the property already has approved, we really need to understand what's in there so that when we're making our motions, we can be sure not to fall over it, right?
And actually, if you word your motion in a way that that your recommendations are consistent with the terms of the PD, then there would never be a conflict because the PD is going to control.
Right. And we can't word it properly if we don't know what the PD is.
Yeah,
That's
and
my
I don't
whole,
have
yeah.
the PD.
I appreciate the add-in. So just that the hardscape plan, the materials and the detailing are consistent with the Hyde Park regulations, I guess. What were the other things we were going through? We talked about the solid waste, mechanical. We talked about the fencing. We were gonna add some language in that, right, for that, in terms of being consistent with the zoning and the ordinances under chapter 27, as well as the district guidelines. Rooftop, they've done that. Do we wanna add in, recommendations to revisit the stucco patterning? I thought you had a good point about the materiality. If you're gonna mimic the siding, why not carry it all the way around, right? Especially
Yes.
because you're facing the sides that don't have it. You're facing your most critical neighbors, which are gonna have to live with your property for 24/7, 365.
I'm not sure, looking at just one color painted horizontal rain screen
Bless you.
siding, bless you. Or I think what that is horizontal rain screen, it's like the, held off the block, and I guess that's what it looked like in the renderings.
No, the agent applicant said it was the stucco pattern. This is outside the framework. In the framework, they're like aluminum louver appliques on top of the wall
Yeah,
section. But outside, the applicant stated, and I even wrote it somewhere, it's the stucco pattern that's making this horizontal.
I actually thought it was the product type, until he clarified
All of the
that.
horizontal facing the street is stucco?
Yes. All stucco.
Yeah, the striations are in the stucco.
And I do think it would make a difference, because especially the south elevation, you know how the sun shifts and changes throughout the year and throughout the day, and you're gonna see those shadow lines differently than you would a block of, stucco lines that are 8 feet by 8 feet or whatever patterning they choose. So do we wanna take that up or not? Do we think that's a valid point in terms of being consistent with the district in terms of its suggestion of materiality and detail level? Consistency with that?
I thought it was a good recommendation.
I think so too. There's a level of, there's a design quality that's proposed for the public spaces, the public faces of this building. And it would be, to me, a prudent measure to continue some of this language for those other sides of the building. It's a consistency item.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Mr.
clearly
Prokop?
they consider it back a house, and that's why they just went to a
Right.
standard, and whatever needs to be done for control joint spacing and whatnot, but,
Unfortunately, this project is actually four-sided. It's not two-sided, it's four-sided.
There's no back.
It
Yeah.
is back of house, but unfortunately it faces the street
And it,
and the
and
neighbors.
and it
And the
also has,
neighbors.
I mean, they have, what, maybe 6-foot-high fencing, and these walls are almost 23 feet tall, so.
Yeah, I don't know how you pull off stucco with that many joints 8 inches apart or, you know.
That's not our problem.
It's not our problem.
I know, but from a workmanship standpoint and the quality of,
Oh,
I think you
hey, I gotta
can.
tell you, my stucco brick looks great.
I got a stucco guy. I'll introduce you. Anyway.
That's what lasers are made for.
Okay, so we talked about the ADA ramp, we have consideration for that.
Its materiality, its integration with the architecture, its potential for relocation.
The only other thing was hardware and lighting on the list of materials that they talked about. I don't remember seeing hardware. So if we move forward with a motion, we need to indicate hardware is to be reviewed and approved.
automatic,
I'm gonna ask this question.
automatic doors. There's no hardware.
With my time on the commission, it's never come up, but it did tonight. So, the handicap lift idea.
That's right, we said we would discuss that.
To go up 18 inches though, that's why I asked how high the floor was above grade. To go up 18 inches, those things are god awful unsightly.
They are, and because they've already stating that that space is limited and it's valuable, why would you put something like that? Because they are tall, you have barriers, you have the wall around the lift. Even if you do it glass, they have
Yeah.
some kind of frame and
They
attachment.
take up space, they just don't take up as much space as what this.
Yeah,
ramp's
but
gonna
they're
take
so
up.
much worse looking.
Yeah, all the mechanical stuff that goes with it, you've
It's
gotta
just
hide
awful.
that, cause it's not just the lift.
Huh.
Yeah,
I would assume that the elevations approaching the front door can be worked out so that they have space for a ramp that is well designed. I mean, obviously, there has been a pretty high quality, close attention to detailing.
right.
And so I think that they should be able to figure out a ramp and work with the elevations. They're going to have to be putting in a new sidewalk in the front anyway,
Right,
so they can raise it up if they need.
agreed. I think they probably have more possibilities from an architectural language with the ramp integration than a lift.
Yeah, yeah.
It just had never come up.
I think I agree with that statement. I think there's a much higher possibility of a better architectural solution with the ramp.
Aesthetically,
And
yeah.
from a
Oh,
lift
yes.
standpoint,
Yeah.
you hardly ever use a lift for that low a change
Oh,
Right.
absolutely
of
not.
elevation.
Right, and there's so many people that use the ramps beside someone in a wheelchair.
I love to walk on
Right.
ramps. I'll walk on ramps rather than going up a stair with my hips.
Right, and so those of us who might have limited mobility but don't need a wheelchair, we may not be so inclined to open the door and use the lift. And you can walk with your group up a ramp more easily, and
Yep.
it's more like part of the flow, yeah. All right, so any other points of consideration? Anyone willing to entertain a motion at this time? I know there's a lot.
Yeah, there is a lot. I'm looking over here at our fellow commissioner with his copious notes.
He said the other night he wasn't a note taker.
Who, Mr. Profile?
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
All right. I know I'm gonna miss one. I move that, that a certificate of appropriateness, be granted with conditions for ARC 23-341 at 1504 South Howard Avenue with the following conditions: that there be no exterior roof access ladder, that the applicant submit railing and planter design adjacent to the outdoor dining area to staff for approval, that the applicant consider relocating the ADA accessible ramp to adjacent to the outdoor dining area and away from the most prominent corner of the property, that the owner coordinate shielding of any potential utility additions, including gas, electric, water, devices that may be required, that the applicant provide further details of the landscaping and fencing improvements that would be required by Chapter 27, that the applicant would consider incorporating a more consistent stucco pattern on all sides of the building, because otherwise, and the two that I had written on here, and that the applicant obtain contributing structure designation from the Historic Preservation Commission for the single-family home at 1401 South DeSoto Avenue, and also that the applicant obtain a right-of-way permit from the City of Tampa and coordinate with City Mobility Department to regulate the valet parking management of the parking spaces north of the property along Hills Avenue. Because based upon finding a fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines and the City of Tampa, as well as Chapter 27 of the city ordinances.
For the following reason.
For the following reasons.
For the following reasons: that the massing materiality and scope of the project blends with the commercial edge of Howard Avenue and the transition to the residential neighborhood nearby by use of the lower outdoor dining area canopy.
I have a second.
I will second that motion.
So before we have an up-down vote, do you understand the conditions put forth here tonight?
Tyler Hudson, for the record, we understand and accept the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll go ahead and vote. Those in favor, please state aye and raise your hand indicating so. Aye.
Aye.
Nay?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you and congratulations. Straighten up the desk.
So I did okay.
Thanks, Ron.
No, she hit it.
And you know I'm gonna remember it.
She hit it pretty good.
only one per day.
She did
No,
hit it pretty
they were already, somebody's
Oh.
been testing that.
Okay.
I only did one edge. There's like scratches through the surface. Were you doing that, Saul? Yeah, okay. All right. I'm gonna have her come in and do a spiel for me.
When I was working with the airport, did Sterling Peak, he had a guy on his staff, his name was Rowan. And whenever anyone wanted to propose a new material or a new assembly or a new finish, he would give it to Rowan, and he would torture it to death.
Oh, yeah.
And if he was impressed, they got to use it.
I got a lot of tools in my garage.
We have Tom.
Even a flame.
We could have a party, we'd all show up, pay money for charity to beat on it.
To beat on. We have Tom.
Well, remember, I mean, you're a block away from, the Gasparillos, so that's gonna happen.
Yeah, we have Tom Hammer in our office that tests every material in the office. He has waterproof testing, he has durability testing, he has
Susan.
everything. Anyway.
All right.
We have another case.
On to the next
Thanks.
case. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation Staff. The next item on the agenda this evening is case ARC 22-25 for the property located at 507 East Hughes Street in the Tampa Heights Historic District. This request before you this evening is for a certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of a contributing structure. This application was opened on October 14th of 2021. The request was initially scheduled for the March 7th, 2022 ARC hearing, but the agent at that time was not available to appear, so the case was continued. It was first heard by you on June 6th of 2022, but it was continued at that hearing and has since been continued twice. The agents, which have changed since the initial application, were required to renotice for today's public hearing. Moving to the photo presentation, you can see before you the location map showing the Tampa Heights Historic District. The property in question is shown in green with the red arrow pointing to it. The red dotted line shows the boundary of the local historic district, and the blue dotted line shows the boundary of the National Register Historic District. This is the 1920s Sanborn map showing the location of the subject site in green. This is a, pardon me, circa 1924 building, so it shows on this particular map. You can see that it's a wood frame structure, 1 story, is a dwelling with a full front facade, front porch. This is the present day aerial site showing the property located along the south side of Hughes Street, east of Central Avenue and west of I-275. This was the condition of the building in early 2022. You can see the damages that were incurred during an attempt to re-roof the structure. This is the north side of the building, the front. This is the east facade. You can see the bowing east wall. This is the west side of the structure. And then this is the rear, or the south side of the structure. You can see the split near the roof. Moving into the adjacent properties and the surrounding area, this is the property directly to the east. This is the house directly to the west. This is looking east along Hughes Street and west along Hughes Street. So the property in question is located on your left in this picture. These next photos shows the initial damages in more detail. So here we are looking from the front of the house along the east wall. This is a shot looking at the east side of the building. You can see the bowing in the roof. This is from the back of the building, looking at the east wall and the roof eave. And again, the rear of the building showing the split at the roof line. In January of 2023, the ARC administrator placed this property in violation for demolition by neglect, as it had been several months since the application had come forward to the ARC. We were alerted on April 20th of 2023 that the building had sustained additional damage, and these photos show the damage to the east wall and to the foundation of the building. You can see how this additional damage exacerbated the existing conditions that had already been incurred. So the city issued a remedial order to repair and stabilize the building, and you can see how that was done in these photos. Code enforcement also placed a violation on the property for work without permits, and a stop work order was issued. And the property is also under violation now as an unsecured vacant structure. That concludes the photo presentation. This time we'll have the applicant come forward and present the request.
Thank you, Ms. Lund.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Roberto Diaz. I'm the agent for the owner of this property at this time. I was supposed to be here with the engineer, but he's he's hospitalized right now since it's been in the hospital for like 3 days already. So, a request of the owner, Ms. One explained here. The house had the damage caused on the roof on the east wall of the structure was caused as well. They were trying to do some roof replacement, and it happened that the pillars of the house have settled with the time, and pretty much the whole east wall they are not being sitting on at that time on the actual pillars of the house. There is actually like around half of the floor joists of the house, they are not receiving support from the pillars. They've been sitting for the time. With the weight of the shingles being put on the roof, they push too much force on the floor joist that the east wall, part of the south wall too, completely got, not completely, but detached of the actual house trusses. And this was very, we don't have pictures here, it was submitted on the application, on the review from the engineer. The owner have taken like 3 different bids so far trying to get a budget to repair the house. All the budgets they have received, they came on around $364,000. The second bid was like $276,000. After a couple of appraisals that were submitted in the application were done, it shows that they pretty much don't give you any kind of value to the house, just except for land value. And even after doing the renovation that is required to bring the house up to date, since it's still like a 1924 building, you know, the market value given to the appraisal to the house is in the $380,000 to the house. And that's the reason why the economic hardship from the point of view of the owner, like after putting close to $300,000 more, 200 something, whatever, to the house, is going to be a complete loss for him. That compared to build a new house, pretty much the new appraisal is showing there will be around a value of $580,000. So. And you have a couple of engineer reports from the house at this time, you know, stating what I was just saying, you know, about half of the pillars have been settled, and they are not providing any kind of support to the floor joists. The result of the foundation, of course, and the failure in the foundation and the accident created by the roofing company, pretty much there is a complete misalignment on the overall structure right now, and the complete structural integrity of the overall structure of the house is highly compromised. So that's pretty much everything I have to share with you. I don't know if you have any questions regarding. There is also, I know it's, how you call it? It's not historic district, but there is design for the new house. The new building house is that comply with requirements on the area of the kind of type of house that you could build. I don't know. I know it's not part of this hearing to decide.
We will not entertain that.
Yeah.
sorry.
So-
So that's the end of your presentation?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. We'll go through the staff report then at this time.
Okay.
Staff finds that this application, while the submission requirements and the public notice requirements were met, that the applicant did not meet the burden of proof through substantial and competent evidence to meet the standards that must be considered for a demolition application of a contributing structure, including that the threshold for an economic hardship has not been met. And therefore, staff is recommending the denial of this request for demolition based on the applicant's ability to rehabilitate the existing structure with no economic hardship, that the property can be put to a reasonable beneficial use without the approval of the demolition application, and that the applicant can obtain a reasonable return from the existing building. Additionally, it must be considered that the demolition and removal of the structure will diminish the number and concentration of contributing structures in the historic district, thereby negatively impacting the district. I am available for any questions, and that's all I have for the staff report. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Mr.
I would like to add
Yes.
some to that, because I think that there was perhaps not clarification on the subsequent damage that was done in April. And I believe that, you know, there was testimony that was provided during the applicant's presentation that that may have been linked to some sort of structural failure or foundation shifting. And the fact is that that damage was done by individuals who entered the property and demolished the wall using sledgehammers. So that's when we were called out to the property. In the staff report, we're asking for any sort of police reports or any sort of remedy, arrest records, something to address that particular issue, that there was damage that was done in between your continuation and the application coming back and being placed on the agenda, that essentially heightened the level of damage on the structure that existed from what was first submitted for your consideration. So that's something that you can maybe take up in questions, but I want that to be clear that this is not a natural phenomenon of deterioration. This was a man-made condition that we feel is a self-imposed economic hardship.
Thank you. So, seeing no public comment, we are not even going to ask for public comment. We're going to ask questions. A question I have is, there was a statement that there was some sort of structural engineer report. I don't see that in our packet. So is there something that was submitted that we didn't get?
Yes.
I don't see it. No, I'm asking for the structural engineer report that was stated in the remarks by the agent. I don't see that. And it also stated there's an insurance company assessment. Yes, there are values within the burden of proof list, which we're gonna ask you to go through, but I don't see that either. Okay. So, sir, while we are looking at the materials you're submitting now to the commission, could you go through your burden of proof response? There's a three-page
Yes.
document under Brothers Diaz Constructions.
Yes.
So if you could go ahead and enter those into the record, just go through the different points and then your response to those.
So you want me to read everything here?
Typically, when we go through this, we like to hear what it is that you feel is appropriate, you know, in terms of how you as the applicant agent and how the owner, because we would imagine this is coming from the owner's perspective.
Of course.
Really is trying to engage this as a solution, right? So they're asking for a demolition, we need to understand why. So rather than us sitting here in silence and reading it ourselves, please do go ahead and go through those. Thank you.
Okay.
Just starting with burden of proof pursuant to the request.
Okay. Burden of proof, the applicant shall prove through substantial complete evidence that the demolition of regulation is necessary, including in the evidence presented. Alteration to demolition of regulations such as planned developed district. My answer was, as per engineering report as well as insurance company assessment of this property is imminent of danger of collapsing and cannot be relocated. There is, you have the insurance and engineering reports. Whether the mark of building or structure can be retaining on the site. As per engineering report, as well as the insurance company assessment, this property is in imminent danger of collapsing and cannot be rebuilt. It can be rebuilt, pretty much the south wall and east wall have to be removed completely, and we can try to we have to remove the whole roof trusses. South wall, east wall, completely. They are completely out. They are not sitting. They don't have any kind of support right now, and we could have to try to fix all the pillars they have that you can. They don't have. They are not supporting, giving any kind of support at the floor joist. You know, and from there we could try to repair the building itself, and that's one of the reasons of the burden of the hardship of the economic hardship is it can be done in a sense, but at what price? That is not going to be this is going to be pretty much wasting money. You can spend $250,000 trying to bring that property up to code, but you know, it's a complete waste of money since the property is not get any value from it. That's the perspective from the owner. Whether they're located, relocating the landmark of building or structure is appropriate and feasible. It's not. Where the applicant has the ability to build the proposed new construction with a reasonable period of time if the application is approved. And yes, we have the ability to rebuild if we get the approval from you in a timeline from 4 to 8 months, depending of preliminary design approval, of course. Where the demolition is justified as economic hardship. Again, this we have here this property poses potential liability on both homeowner and the city, as the property is really unstable, and could cause the bodily harm collapsing. The city want to build for relocation. Homeowner will donate the structure on site to the city at no cost, and the city can relocate the building at cost and liability. That's actually the owner was looking at this point. If you know, if the last conversation with us was like, if we don't get the approval, he will try to, actually it's already for sale. He put the house for sale, waiting for a response from you guys because I had talked with several contractors trying to see, you know, getting all the bids for the remodeling of the property. But it's very difficult to be able to bring that house with only $75,000 or $80,000 to bring it up to code. Economic hardship on the application for certificate of appropriateness to demolish. The ARC shall consider the question of economic hardship for the applicant and shall determine whether the landmark of the property's historic district, multi-property designated historic conservation overlay district can be put to reasonable benefit used without the approval of the demolition applicant. Estimate of cost of, estimate, he's asking for the estimate cost of the demolition is around $8,000. Report of licensed engineer architect with experience, so you have that in the report I submit to you. Estimated market value of the property, both in the current condition and after completion. You have the two appraisals done on the property with after the house be renovated, and if we build a new one too. The appraisal told us that it was supposed to be 3 reports, one as it is, one after renovated, and one if we build new. you only have two. He told us that there was no need to create a third one, since he already stated in one of those that he's not giving any kind of value to the house itself, just as the land value. An estimate from architect, developer, real estate consultant, advisor. Yeah, you have that there. And amount paid for the property, the date of purchase, and the party from who purchased it. That information is, it say here the owner bought the house in 2015 for $62,000. The property is income producing, annual gross income from the property. Another thing that I also put in there as economic hardship, because is the difference also between the insurance company, how much they want insurance for that house versus the new house, whatever it's for rent or for sale. That pretty much save you like $350 per month in insurance, the home insurance cost right there. So the price obtained with the previous 2 years, we submit that. Any listing of the properties or rents, we don't have any previous price 2 years before. Asking how much the rental was, the house was renting for $1,200. You have the access value for $2,122, and the property taxes paid in $2,122. I want to address, I don't know if you want me to, regarding the comments that it was done about the damage on the structure. I was trying to make sure, I wasn't not addressing the new damage. I was talking more about what happened the first time, the reason why it happened. On the load on the east wall. What caused it was the lack of the seating of the pillars of the house. The exterior damage on the exterior wall that was demolished. We talked with the owner and myself a couple of times with the detective was handled the case. He was trying to get through some cameras on some neighborhoods. I think they got like at the beginning there was like the car, somebody who was there working, but they didn't get any result of that. He had a interview with the owner, a Zoom meeting, I think. I know, as I spoke with them, a lot of people is like, was the owner who was trying to damage the property, trying to create this? And I think a lot of people want to think, yes, was the owner. I don't think so. The owner is an engineer himself. There is a lot of ways, if you wanted to try to cheat the system, try to do it. The information I provide to the detective at that time is that the previous contractor who was working for the owner in a couple of the different houses, he got fired. After 2 years, you have a couple of hearings before, somebody attended, then you have to postpone it, and a couple of issues too in two other properties that the owner had, and he had to fire. They're in litigation, something like that. And I provide that information to the detective if he wanted to, go around to see who were the people who could have done that, or for what reason they could have done it. But he told me he closed the case. They didn't got any kind of like a proof of information, something about what happened there. Have any questions?
I think you got through most of this. Let's go ahead and start with questions from the commissioners. I'll start with Mr. Prokoff this time, sir, if you have any.
Hi.
Hello, sir.
Who wrote the structural inspection report? And why isn't it on his letterhead or anything?
I'm sorry?
Who wrote the structural inspection report, and why isn't it on his letterhead?
Oh, it was not in his letterhead.
Why didn't he sign it?
It
And
was.
I assume this is the gentleman you say is in the hospital now?
Yes. Okay. He works, no, the one he was in the hospital is Jorge Hernandez. He works with the engineer, Mr. right here, the report, engineer report. You have two reports, one from Livingstone Consulting.
I'm looking at this two-page thing right here.
There is two reports, one from Livingstone Consulting, and the other one is from Mario A. Parra. Yeah, it is there. Mario Parra, and he's signing also
No,
at the end.
this is structural inspection report saying, I, Mario Parra. This is way up front. Okay. All right. I didn't get to this structural report at the other. It's the exact same thing that's written on the front 2 pages. Okay. And we don't have, yeah, I'm just saying this here is, okay. We don't, do you know what kind of historic preservation experience Mr. Parra, the structural engineer, has? Since we can't ask him.
No.
Okay.
He was not asking, sorry, he was not asking to demolish the house. He was just doing a report of how, in his letter, I don't think he gave a recommendation to demolish the house.
Okay, but
You know-
as part of your burden of proof, you're saying per the engineering report, the property is in imminent danger of collapsing and cannot be relocated. So, or it can be retained. It cannot be rebuilt. There's, whether the landmark or building or structure can be retained on the site as per the engineering report as well as the insurance company assessment, this property is in imminent danger of collapsing and cannot be rebuilt. So, Mr. Parra does not state that it cannot be rebuilt. Is that what you're
Yes,
now
correct. In
testifying?
the letter is saying that it's pretty much like 75% of the structure is required repair
Right.
or replacement.
So he's not saying it cannot be rebuilt?
Correct. And that's what I stated a couple of times. Well,
Okay, but in your burden of proof, it says that the engineer says it cannot be rebuilt.
yeah, my mistake there.
Okay. He just stated he didn't say that. Right, okay. Where in the, can you point out where in the insurance assessment, the insurance company assessment, where they state that the building cannot be rebuilt? I understand that's what's, you're written in the burden of proof, but I want to know where in the insurance company assessment where they say it can't be rebuilt. I mean, you understand, we haven't had a chance to review all of these reports.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
I'm asking you to
Yeah,
tell
I
me
understand.
where it says it.
Well, in tandem with that, is there actually an insurance report on the damages done to the home in this last incident?
Okay, no. This one here, to my hands, I never received the engineer report or the insurance company report. In all the documents I load there, there was some other documents that was submitted in the previous application, when the previous hearing, and I don't have those. So I don't have that one.
So to clarify, what we're trying to get you to clarify for us is the incident that happened since March,
Yes,
where the walls were taken out.
yeah, they were like vandalism.
You do not have a police report, nor do you have an insurance report where the owner filed an insurance claim.
No, he didn't file any, to my knowledge, he didn't file any claim
And
to the insurance company.
And no police report.
The report, I asked the police, the officer who was in charge of the case, And he told me that was just closed because they didn't got any kind of like
I understand the case could be closed, but that still means there was a case. That means there's a case number or a report number.
Yes. No, I'm sorry, I don't have that.
Okay.
Any other questions, Mr. Papa?
At the very beginning of the thing, you state that the collapse began as a result of a roofing.
So that was my conversation with the engineer when he went to the house the first time, even before the
The
damage
wall,
done.
before the
Yes.
sidewalk, before the damage was done.
You could see that the exterior east wall and south wall, the floor joists are not resting on the pillars. The pillars are stuck, and it's pretty much like some pillars from the center of the house are supporting the actually floor joists of the house, right? So if you try to go in the corner of the house.
I'm asking about the roof.
Yeah, if you jump, the floor will do this. So at that time, the engineer, that's what we came, that's what I thought. That when they put the weight of the shingles on top of that wall, since it didn't have the support of the pillars, it pulled off the wall from the.
Right, but what caused the bow in the ridge of the roof?
The shingles.
Okay,
The
so they
cost of the shingles.
overloaded.
They overloaded that wall.
They overloaded the ridge beam
Yes.
with shingles.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Which seems to me that's the start of all this.
Yes, of course.
Is a roofing company putting a bunch of shingles up on the ridge beam that the ridge beam couldn't support.
If you have, if that wall had the support from the pillars, it will have sustained the weight, in a sense. But yes, again, yes.
Okay. To me, again, was a lawsuit pursued?
Yes, I think
with
so.
the roofing company?
Yes, and the owner got a settlement for like 100,000 something. 100,000. The owner just filled out a claim for it. That was paid like 100,000 something.
Okay, so that's not anywhere in this financial hardship that the owner got $100,000 from a roofing company to repair this roof, to repair
For a
this building?
structure.
It's nowhere in the financials in this submission.
The amount he got, or the paperwork from the.
That the owner received $100,000 is what you just stated, correct?
Yes.
The owner received $100,000 from the roofing company for the damages that were caused to this house.
I think so.
And that's not in these hardship financial numbers, that the owner already got $100,000 to do the repairs.
I'm sharing that information with you. If you want to do the math, yeah, he got $100,000 from them, but it still doesn't cover.
But that's not in any of these financial hardship calculations. You have to prove financial hardship by running calculations and saying it's going to cost way too much more.
That's what I'm saying.
And the owner's got $100,000 in addition to this that's not in these calculations.
Yes, it is. That's what
Okay.
I'm trying to.
All right.
That's what I'm saying.
Can you point, so you have a copy of the packet you gave us, right?
Yes.
Can you point in the packet where it states that the owner received $100,000 and that $100,000 is
No.
accounted for in the?
No, that's not on the package. What you have on the package is the like 3 different bits. For
Understood, but what my colleague was trying to state, and it seemed like you were saying that it was in there, is
no.
whether or not the $100,000 that your client received from the roofing company or the insurance company,
Yes.
however, when this damage was done and he made the claim about the roofing materials damaging the roof and subsequently the wall,
Yes.
he received a payment that should have been in good faith applied to the repair of the home, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what my colleague is trying to get to, is it included in the economic hardship calculations? You gave us 3 numbers that you said you got.
Of course. Mhm.
When you look at those numbers, you have to apply
Yes.
the insurance dollars back to that
Mm-hmm.
to say The overall hardship is 364,000 minus 100,000.
Okay.
That you already got. So
Mhm.
is it or is it not embedded in these calculations and shown in this report that you?
Okay,
that you
it's not embedding
submitted?
there per se, the $280,000 minus $100,000 that he already got from the claim. So whatever number I provide there, so we just have to subtract the amount he got from the claim, and that will give us a number of how much is the loss in there.
So following that line of questioning,
Mm-hmm.
is it the owner's intent to submit a claim for the damage that has been done subsequently to the wall?
Another claim? I don't think so, because he doesn't have, since the house was vacant, what he had is like a very, I don't know what kind of, it's temporary liability insurance, what he have. He doesn't have any insurance towards the property.
Okay.
I wish he had some.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
All right, so to piggyback that, again, because a biggie here is the hardship, the economic
Of course.
hardship. And we've got an appraisal here I'm looking at that shows an opinion of value of 380,000, is that correct?
Yes,
And I
after
believe-
renovated.
And I believe I read that the average renovation was gonna be around $260 or so thousand dollars?
Yes.
So if you subtract 260 from 380, what number do you get?
Sorry. 260 to
120.
And the purchase price was $60,000, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So he's making a gross profit after renting this home for many years, still at $60,000. Now, let's add back the $100,000 insurance claim credit. He's now making a gross profit of over $150,000. I'm just not seeing the economic hardship based on that criteria. Are those numbers, in your opinion, from what I just added and subtracted, correct?
Okay. So, let's.
So
back-
380 is the value.
Yes. Okay.
Subtract out the 265 renovation cost and the $60,000 purchase price.
So the 276, that's the lowest bid that he got for renovation. You add to that the extra $100,000 he got from the claim, that give you 376.
No.
No.
176. You take it away.
It's the opposite.
It's free
I'm sorry?
money.
That $100,000 should come away from
Oh, yes,
the
sorry.
construction
Yes.
costs, because you're using that to
Yes,
pay for
yes.
the construction.
You already have it.
Well, client.
Yeah. It's kind of it's giving him like a $200,000.
Be a real nice Vegas trip.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, going by those numbers, yeah, there is like a profit margin there.
So you agree that there's still at least a gross profit of some form after those numbers have run.
If you do it like that, if we go with the lowest bid, yes, it is.
I've got some more. I've got some more questions.
No, because the other hire is like $100,000 more. Yes.
So I've got some more questions for you. So this Brothers Diaz Constructors or
Yes.
Construction, is that you?
Yes.
Okay. And what is your role in this project at this time?
A contractor.
Okay. What is your experience with historic restoration?
Historic reservation? No, I don't have a.
You don't have any?
No.
Okay. Do you have a Florida state license,
Yes.
contractor's license?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's that number?
CGC 1530065.
Okay. Based on the budgets that were presented and you telling us that you are a contractor, do you agree with these budgets?
I think they're overpriced, in my personal opinion. I'm not, I think they're a little higher of what maybe I could do.
So are,
But I'm okay. I'm not bidding for the remodeling of the project or something like that. And I even told the owner I was not interested in doing it. Just
so
for
you've not
disclosure.
given the owner a price, he has just hired you to present to us tonight, is that?
No, yes, no, what I'm trying to say is like, from my opinion, right, if I remodel the house, let's say, if you're taking it from the perspective of the owner, if he remodels the house, that he will make $100,000 or close to $100,000 profit at this point. From what I see on the house, the amount of work required to bring the house up to code and repair, right? And do a good job for future owners. You pretty much doing the same job, the same work to like build a new house. It's like you're gonna do the whole amount of work to build a new house, and just to keep it being a 1929 house. You're gonna invest the amount of work, I think even more kind of work, because at this point, and I'm talking from the construction perspective, you go there, you turn down, spend $8,000 and build new. You're done. Trying to remodel, right, and bring it up to code and secure the house, it takes a lot of more kind of like work, intensive work on it, in a sense, right? And that's where, from my personal opinion, it's like, it's kind of like it's not worth the amount of work you're gonna do. You're gonna spend $300,000. You say, okay, there's still a profit. But at the same time, if you spend those $300,000 in a new house, you could make a bigger profit. And if you compare like that, or at the same time, you also have the insurance situations, and even though right now here in Florida, like it's kind of difficult, and all the rates are going up. Those the numbers we got from the insurance company were a few months ago before the storm, and I've been hearing that they're raising it again. That's not only for the owner, that's for whoever buy the houses of the house. That's a hardship too, in my opinion. The comparison from a new house to an old house at a $400 more in insurance every month. That's also for me.
But is the owner aware that this home falls within a historic district?
Yeah, yes. So that's what we hear.
So
if they decide no, it's no.
Are
So what can we do?
you aware that the house is currently for sale?
Yes, that's why I say it's mentioned.
I thought he did. I just wanted to say it again. So on their listing, they even talk about it being in a historic district. And part of the questioning here and the hardships, whether you're for or against, rely on the values that are coming from this home fallen in within a protected historic district. So would you agree that this street, for example?
Yes.
Would the homes on this street be worth what they are if they were not in
Mm-hmm.
a historic district?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
If these homes fell a few streets away and were not in the historic district, would this home be worth as much as it is today, being it is in a protected historic district? In your
I don't
opinion?
have any kind of like professional experience to respond that kind of question, you know, like about real estate or something. In my opinion, that I'm in construction. I think you say you was a general contractor. I own a couple of properties, have sold and building others. There is not too much difference, actually. In any case, I think those are these houses in those neighborhoods around the area. I don't think it's affected the fact that it's in historic district, the pricing of those houses. Another thing I wanted to comment what you mentioned before, you were giving talking about the hardship, economic hardship, about the value when they bought the house, $20,000 in 2015, that they bought it for $60,000. But if you go with that number, yes, okay, he has still a margin to make maybe $80,000. But we're looking at the price that the property has right now. Maybe he can make $50,000, but at the end of the day, it's a loss after retaining a property for like 10 years. You know, if you look at the property right now, the land is valued in around 175, 180. So that's when we look at the hardship right now. You have a lot that is worth $180,000. Are you gonna put an extra $280? That doesn't make the sale of the house if you put it for sale. If you look at the value of today, the lot is $180,000.
What we're trying to figure out tonight is do you actually have a hardship?
That's right there. Right, I presented to you the hardship. If you look at the value today of the lot, for myself, if I wanted to sell it, somebody, or if I want to sell it, the lot value right now of that place is $180,000.
Where is that value?
It's right. It's in the price zone.
So you're saying the hardship is because building new versus renovating
No.
is limiting
Yes.
his potential profit. Is that what I'm
I
hearing?
have a lot right now that is cost the house itself. There's no value in the house. It's just the lot, right? It's worth $180,000. Now, to that $100,000, that is the cost today of that lot. If you spend $250,000 to renovate it, that's gonna go to $430,000. That is not gonna cost that money if you sell it. It costs less, but it may be close. I don't know. According to the appraisal, he give it $380. Let's give it $400. Let's give it $420.
But no, you can't
looking at
mix what
hardships-
value is versus what your costs
Yeah, when we're looking
were.
at hardships, we're
You
looking at.
can't blend what a potential value is now versus what the
Right,
real
so-
cost is. The real cost is 60 and 260 to renovate. That's the real cost, not what the potential assessed value is today versus when they bought it.
And in your paperwork you submitted, it shows that there was a rental income.
Yes.
At least up through 2022.
Yeah, it's been vacant for already 2 years already.
And based on those rental incomes, is it correct to say that the rental income covered the cost of the property based on the submissions here in the paperwork?
For the time he was renting it? Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
Okay. So, moving on to just a few more questions I have, can we pull up that picture showing the new damage to that wall? Can he see these?
Yes.
Okay. So, can we agree that pretty much all the framing has been removed except for just a few places?
Yes.
Can we also agree that there's absolutely no braces holding up the structure?
Mm-hmm.
So can we agree that if this house was in imminent danger of falling down without braces on a wall that has no framing, it would have fallen down?
Repeat the question again?
So you agreed that the framing's been removed, is that correct?
Yes.
And you agreed that there's no structural braces vertically, horizontally,
Yeah.
or diagonally
Mhm.
attached to this wall
Mm-hmm.
in this picture,
Yes.
without any sort of structural bracing.
Mm-hmm.
Is the wall standing upright?
At that time, yes, it was.
Did you not present in your hardship paperwork that it was in imminent danger of falling down?
Well, that's what the city itself say. That's why the violations are made, because you itself, the city is saying that that structure is in risk to fall. And again, I present, I'm not gonna, okay, it's gonna fall right now, it's gonna fall 6 months after, it's gonna fall with the first hurricane that I don't think those walls can sustain 90 miles per hour wind. So it's not like if it's gonna fail today, tomorrow, or that it's gonna, at some point it's gonna happen. You
Okay,
have
so-
Unless it gets repaired.
So
Yeah,
you,
of
so-
course.
So,
Yeah.
with that said, though, if the house is in danger of falling and it currently has no bracing on it, would it not be fair to assume that if it was in that bad a shape, it would have fallen down when there was no braces holding up?
At that time.
At that time, holding up that wall?
Now you're asking me to give me an opinion on something.
I'm just asking you a question.
Yes, yes. When I was there and I saw like that, I'm not an engineer to talk about how much load can something sustain or what, right? If you go down that house, those trusses, the four joists are old, they are good. That was one of the comments we did with the inspector, that those old four joists, they were not damaged by termite, and they are all like, they are very, very sturdy. Like, they are pretty much those floor joists, and the roof itself, the structure of the house, is being tied through the roof, right? And that's helping to avoid the house to collapse at this point, correct? Again, the house can be repaired, even if it's like even if you only have two exterior walls remain, it can be repaired.
Okay, so you did a really good job of not answering the question.
Sorry.
What I'm trying to get you to answer is, if a wall is in imminent danger of falling,
Mhm.
or a home is in imminent danger of falling, and all of the structural framing is removed,
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't it fall?
It's just one. It's okay. No.
It's the exterior
You're,
wall.
yeah, it's exterior wall, but you're a contractor, right?
Yes.
So you know that from a structure perspective, you can have what the people call that little game that you take off little pieces until the end to fall apart, right? So yeah, there you go. Of course, you can remove
No,
that wall.
Just answer the,
Let's be honest, okay, this is a gable roof.
that's
Yes.
what all the weight is.
Gable roofs take all the load from the ridge, they shuttle them down to the framed walls. The frame walls take all of that load and distribute it along
Mhm.
the joist beams or the I forget what the hell you call them, the rim joists,
rim
okay?
Yes.
And the rim joists then take that load and they distribute it on the piers, which you
Mhm.
were calling pillars, but they're actually piers.
Yeah.
And those piers then take it down to the ground,
Mhm.
okay? So in the world of physics, once you take a piece of that element out, it's supposed to collapse,
Okay.
okay? What we are seeing here physically in the evidence is that this wall, this entire house did not collapse when this wall was taken out.
Yes.
So, do you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah,
That
definitely.
in some way, this home is able to stabilize itself.
Of
so
course.
that it is not an imminent, if it was imminent,
No,
that's
yes,
the
yes.
verbiage.
I concur with
It
you.
would have fallen.
Yeah, definitely.
And when were the remediation repairs made that were mandated?
Like right next day.
The next
So can we
day?
pull that picture up?
I couldn't find anybody to do the job, so I have to go there myself.
Okay, so
couple of
I
friends.
drove past this property before coming to the meeting tonight,
Okay.
and I walked the sidewalk. So obviously was unable to put a level or anything like that on the property, but would you agree that the wall looks to be fairly plumb?
Oh, no. No. I'm the one who did the job. No. And the floor joists and the wall is completely side all the way.
I didn't ask for about the floor joist, I asked about the wall. Is it plumb, not level?
Plumb? Yeah.
Up and down?
Yeah.
Okay. The floor joist may be out of level, but that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, is that wall plumb?
Yeah, pretty much like I tried to fix it the best I could to provide the support and avoid to collapse, of course.
Okay, so only other question I've got is actually because of some testimony you gave.
Yes.
You mentioned if this home went through a hurricane, you
Mhm.
felt like it would fall down.
Mhm.
Looking at the paperwork, I see September of last year in a lot of this paperwork. So can staff answer when they actually applied the first time? When the damage was done to the roof?
What
Commissioners?
month in 2022 did they first state that there was damage done to the roof because of the loading?
I think it was 2021, right?
The initial application for the certificate of appropriateness to demolish was received on October 14th of 2021.
That was because of the roof loading by the roofer?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So last September, were you in Tampa last September? When the hurricane came through?
It was actually October.
Or was it, no, that was September.
Ian came through in October.
Hurricane Ian that came through. Do you remember that?
I wasn't here in Tampa.
Okay.
I think it was in Orlando, yeah.
All right, well, I can't testify unfortunately, so if you weren't here, I can't really ask you those questions, but,
Are there any other questions while Mr.
I have no question.
No?
I have no question.
Mr. Brother? Further? I don't have no questions. I think we've beaten it up as much as we can. Are there, so there being no one here, there's no public comment, is there any rebuttal that you'd like to add to add anything to the testimony? You have 5 minutes that you can add anything you would like to the hearing.
Okay, no, just only one question so I can give that information to the owner. From when I do the numbers asking about the hardship, economic hardship, I see a loss when I see the numbers, I see a loss of more than $100,000 if I go and do the repair. So you guys, the commission itself, don't consider the value of the property today when you consider the hardship, but whatever money the owner spent when he bought it 10 years ago, right?
We take into consideration the appraiser's valuation, and the appraiser's valuation does include whatever value they give to land, whatever that is. What we take is the full value that the appraiser says it is worth at the time of the appraisal, and in the documentation you gave us, they stated $380,000. That is not for the new, that is for the existing property as is.
No,
the new has no value.
No. That appraisal, if you read the notes from the appraisal, is for the house after being repaired.
You need to go to that report and please point that out, because I do not see that.
Yes.
Yes, Mr.
I'd like to clarify that. The board's subject to review under 27-116. Okay, part of that section defines economic hardship. The exhibits that are presented are intended to move towards your ability to make that determination. So
Okay.
I would say, if the applicant has a question, he's been provided the staff report, and the definition of economic hardship is included in the staff report, and that's what he should refer to the owners.
Okay.
Commissioners, before we get to the final closure of this portion of the public hearing, I do need to inform you that there was a letter submitted from the Neighborhood Association that's in your packets, and that will need to be filed for the record. Thank you.
Yep.
Is that outside the body of the packet we received with the staff report that has all this email traffic? So everything in here, not just one letter, everything in here needs to be recorded or entered into the record?
Yes.
Okay. It's not a given just because it's in here. Okay, all right. Because most of the time when this stuff is with the backup, I assume that's already been in the record because it's been in, stapled. Okay. All right. Okay.
Are we ready to close this portion of the hearing?
So you still have some time left on the clock. If you would like to add any comments, additional information into the record before we close it and we discuss the case, sir.
No, that pretty much does
Okay.
everything I had to share with you guys.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your responses. Go ahead and close the public portion of the hearing and discuss the case.
Okay, sorry, to answer your question, opinion of site value, $200,000.
One second, I already closed this, so I
Oh,
need a
okay.
motion to reopen the public portion of the hearing of the case. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to reopen so he can ask his question.
Second, please.
I'll second.
All in favor, please? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. You may go ahead.
Sorry for that. In the first report, in the last, okay, let me see. Opinion of site value, not the house, the appraiser put $200,000 for the site value. In the page where he's put his signature, the last. On the first report.
Which page?
Where he's saying three.
Is it this page that's up on the screen right now? Can you see that?
Do you have it?
Can he see that, Elaine? That
Okay.
you've got up?
No. What?
Can you-
Right here. Okay, opinion of value. $200,000.
I don't see where this is in the report. Oh, is it this?
Right on top of the page.
Mm-hmm.
Based on that is where the numbers, when we do the numbers, we are, in a loss.
But that's a comp value.
That's correct. Oh, I'll let him answer it.
Can we ask questions to this student? Can we ask?
Well, we reopened it, so yeah, you
Okay.
can ask the question again.
So what you're stating is the appraiser
Mm-hmm.
has valued
The lot.
on his opinion
Mm-hmm.
at 200,000.
Correct. And he put on top of there, like several other houses being sold, lots, the comparison he did for the
But you
lots.
testified that your owner paid 60,000.
2015. Yes, sir.
And they leased out the property, which was an income-producing rental. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So there's never been a loss up till now. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So this value, that's an opinion, could be just that. Is that correct? It could be just an opinion.
An opinion in a sense of if you go, every appraisal is an opinion, right? It's he does a comparison
So would you
there.
rather have a dollar bill and hard money in your hand, or would you rather have me tell you I'll give you $1?
You lost me there.
It's the difference in opinion and reality.
Yeah, yes. I think it's now answering your question. I think it's a fair price. In my opinion, it will go more to close to 180, because I'm looking a lot to buy to build houses, right? So in my opinion, and so you're saying in the location it is, I think it's fair price for the lot. It may be a little high. Everything right now is high. But easily 180, 175, anybody could buy a lot in that place for that price. That's not out of question. I just wanted to point out, since they were asking about the lot.
So if he sold it he bought it for 60, if he could sell it for 200.
No.
If he could sell it for 200.
Yes.
If that's the appraised value, and it's on the market now, if he could sell it for 200, he would have made $140,000. Plus,
Yes.
he received $100,000
Yes.
from the insurance company
Yes.
for the roofing. So he made $240,000.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay?
Now the person who's gonna buy, who's gonna be crazy? The person who's gonna buy only will buy the house for $200,000 if they can build new. If they're trying to repair, it would be a loss for whoever buy the property. So it's kind of like he contradicts himself.
And we have to put up the fact that, the house is for sale.
Okay, any other questions for
problem
the
is
applicant?
elsewhere.
We have to bring this
Yeah,
back.
but I
Any
just
other
wanted to.
questions for the applicant? Sorry that we can't have.
Yeah.
No further questions.
All right, thank you. You have more time because we reopened it. You can add anything back.
No, that was it. I don't want to waste your time.
No.
I explained like.
You were here and you were being treated fairly, so I want to make sure you get your time.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and close the public portion of the hearing, and we're gonna discuss the case, okay? All right.
Okay. So if you can clarify the question, the point he did before when I asked about you using the value of the house when it was bought to contrary to the actual value today. Why do you apply it in the hardship? The previous.
Here's the staff report, the entire code is in this, and it tells you everything about their process.
So technically, it would go to for the first.
It's in there.
It's in here.
I'll refer you to that.
Okay, thank you. No worries.
So we're gonna close it. We're discussing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so
Anything that we need to discuss?
On
In regards to
the burden of proof.
the burden of proof.
Okay.
so the burden of proof is,
Multifaceted. It's
but
got multi-components.
we've asked questions that got testified that, or answered and testified that, given the numbers that were given to us, there's still a positive profit, potentially.
It appears so.
Well, let's go through this. Okay, so burden of proof goes to whether or not the demolition or relocation is necessary according to certain things, right? So was there a burden of proof that proved that neither demolition or relocation was necessary.
It was in fact the opposite. That nowhere in the engineering report or the insurance company assessment did it state that the property could not be rebuilt.
We didn't have an insurance evaluation, we had an appraisal, right? There was no insurance.
Well, that's part of the hardship answer, is that there says an insurance company assessment that states the property cannot be
Right,
rebuilt.
so we didn't have an
We
insurance
didn't see
company
that,
appraisal.
but we
or
have an
assessment.
engineering report. We have an engineering report that doesn't state that.
Right, right. So we would all agree that the burden of proof was not met.
Right, and the engineering report didn't state that it can't be relocated either.
Right.
Didn't state such a thing.
It's not complete and it's not accurate.
Okay. The economic hardship component, which I think is the greater one that we, we really heard a lot about it as being sort of the emphasis.
The crux.
For the request by the owner. So I think we about covered value versus opinions and appraisals and market rates and market conditions. And I think for the most part, we agree that that hasn't been met.
Especially because the $100,000 payment from an insurance company for roof damage was not,
Has not been applied towards.
was not accounted for.
Those factors, yeah.
I almost wish that the owners were here, as well as the contributors to the report, but the owners, because, we could read them the old Riot Act.
It's not our job to read anybody a riot act.
No.
We have to decide whether or not the demolition is appropriate for the property.
But I don't see that.
Well, all the conditions have to be met.
Correct.
And so not meeting just a single condition
Is enough, yes.
is enough.
Is enough.
And it hasn't met several conditions.
We've got a property that is structurally standing, has been standing, has gone through some
Some weather.
significant natural disasters.
Some weather.
No, it's not natural disasters. I think we can conclude that none of the damage occurred but via natural
No.
disasters.
I didn't
Since the
say-
damage.
I'm saying that the
Say
natural
since the
disaster
damage.
did not cause the damage.
Have passed over it,
There
and
was a
it's still
hurricane that
standing.
went through here
Okay,
a year ago.
yes.
Right.
And on top of that, we beat that dead horse a lot on the economic side because that was really what they were trying to use. But ultimately, I feel like the numbers, one, are high, and two, when you start backing in, it's just not there.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And we have a report from staff stating this. Staff recommends denial of the request to demolish a contributing structure based on the applicant's ability to rehabilitate the existing structure with no economic hardship. That the property can be put to a reasonable beneficial use without
Right.
approval of the demolition application.
Right.
And that the applicant can obtain a reasonable return from the existing building.
I think we all ascertain that for,
I think we
Yeah.
did that independently.
We've ascertained that
Our staff told
ourselves.
us that.
yep.
I think that we are.
We concur.
I looked at the listing.
You can't mention anything about values or anything.
I'm not, I'm
Okay.
saying, I looked at the pictures.
Yeah,
So by them putting the house on the market, obviously it made it to where it's in public purview for anyone to pull it up on any real estate,
MLS listing.
MLS app, whatever.
Right.
And, again, I've not been in the house, but it looks like, short of this one wall that needs work, you could almost move in. So,
All right.
May I move?
Any motion
Please
to
do.
entertain at this point? And I would say, look at the staff report for language to support any motion.
I move to deny certificate of appropriateness for demolish, relocate for ARC 22-25, located at 507 East U Street, Tampa, Florida. Inasmuch as the agent has not satisfied the requirements of Chapter 27, Section 27-116F of the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances, in that there were no that the applicant can rehabilitate the existing structure with no economic hardship, that the property can be put to reasonable beneficial use without the approval of the demolition application, and the applicant can obtain a reasonable return from the existing building, as well as the applicant did not submit adequate documentation of burden of proof.
That was, clarify that. So that, I think what you meant to say, the applicant did not submit substantial competent evidence to support that the demolition is necessary. Does that
The
sound right?
applicant did not submit adequate,
Substantial competent.
substantial,
Competent?
competent evidence
Right,
to support
perfect.
their burden of proof.
I'll second.
So, sir, do you understand the motion that's been presented here?
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, please state aye and raise your hands indicating so.
Aye.
Motion carries. And I need a motion to enter into the record all exhibits presented tonight into the record.
And if I may add to that, if we could also add the September staff reports, or staff approvals into that motion.
Absolutely.
I move that we add to the record the September staff approvals as well as all documents submitted at this hearing this evening.
Have a second, please?
I will second that motion.
All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Adjourn until next month, and thank you so much.